What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I'll be showing you how to do an oil change on a 2020 GMC Canyon. Now this one's actually the V6 variant. Now let's get into the tools we're gonna need for today, and we'll need a ratchet. You'll need a decently sized extension, 24mm socket and a 15mm socket. You'll also need a drain pan and possibly a jack depending on the height of the car. So first steps first is actually you can go ahead and just loosen up the drain cap or the filler cap. You don't actually need to remove it all the way, just keep it loose. That way it just helps the oil flow out the bottom a little bit. And so after we loosen the filler cap, go ahead and go to the oil filter, which is actually on the driver's side right behind the fuse box. And if you look down here, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll see that cap right there. And that's what you're going to use your 24mm socket to loosen that up a bit. Now we're actually not going to take it all the way out. We're just going to go ahead and loosen it. That way while we're under the car draining the oil, there's no oil that's stuck up there in the filter, and it'll go down as you're draining the oil on the bottom. All right, so for this part you don't necessarily need a swivel socket, but in order for me to put the camera where I wanted it to, I had to. But you really don't need it. So go ahead and loosen that up a little bit. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 turns. And now we'll go ahead and go under the car. Okay, so once you've loosened the oil filter a little bit, we're actually gonna go under the car right behind the passenger tire. Go ahead and put your oil pan down there too, and bring your ratchet and the 15mm socket. And once you have yourself situated down here, you can see the drain plug right over here. Go ahead and grab your ratchet and just loosen it. Ideally, you want to wait a little bit so you don't burn yourself. And usually you want to have a rag in hand too, just in case you make any messes. So once you loosen out with the ratchet, go ahead and just finish it off with your hands. I'm gonna say one more time, just be careful, it is gonna be hot. And make sure you have the vent port open on your oil pan, or your drain pan, I guess. You have oil everywhere, but it's alright. It's all in the oil pan. Or drain. I keep calling it an oil pan. Drain pan, that's what it is. Now once you've left that drain for about, I don't know, 5 minutes, you can go ahead and clean up your drain plug and put that back in. Now on the drain plug is actually a little rubber, which you want to make sure it's intact. If not, you want to buy a new one. Now not always do the oil filters and stuff come with these gaskets, so you might have to buy them separate, but they usually sell them at the AutoZones or your local auto parts store. I'll go ahead and tighten it up. Now usually after I tighten the drain plug, I like to hit it with some brake clean. Just make sure the area is nice and clean. That way in the future you can tell if there's any leaks or not. Now once you've done that, you're all set down here, and we can make our way back up top. Now once you made your way up into the engine bay, we'll go ahead and finish unscrewing the oil filter. Now usually you want to have like a rag or a shirt aside for this one as well, because when you pull that out, sometimes it could drip a little bit. Go ahead and stick your hand down there and just finish pulling that out. Oh. There we go. All right, so now once we have our oil filter out, we need to go ahead and actually take the filter out of the cap, and we also need to take this O-ring out as we're going to replace it. Go ahead and use a pick, or you can use a flathead as well. Go ahead and work that around and pull it out. Go ahead and just pull out the oil filter. Hands can get a little oily sometimes. Here's the new filter and new O-ring. Now usually when my hand gets really oily from pulling out the oil filter, I'll just literally use that same oil to just lube it up. You always want to lube up the O-rings or the new ones when you put them back in, because you don't want them to bind up when you're putting them back in, and you don't want them to tear. Go ahead and put that back in. And now when you put your oil filter back in, make sure you put this side into the cap as it pops into that hole. You know, it shouldn't slide out easy at all. Now that we're set here, we'll go back and put it in the car. Now that you have everything set with the oil filter, let's go ahead and put it back in. Sometimes you need to wiggle a little bit to get it back in there. But go ahead and screw it in as much as you can by hand, and then go ahead and grab your 24mm socket again. Go ahead and tighten it up fully. Now these, you don't want to crazy over tighten them, but you'll know when it's fully tightened. I'm not sure what the torque specs are, but if I find them, I'll put them down in the description as well. But now that we have that tightened, come back up here and we'll actually finish taking out the oil cap, and we're gonna go ahead and fill her up. Now this car actually calls for 530 full synthetic, and you always want to actually make sure that it's DEXOS approved. So we're gonna go ahead and fill her up. We're gonna go ahead and put 6 squirts in. All right, so since I didn't have a funnel, I had to make one using a large water bottle. Now, I have to double check this. I'm not sure if it's 100%, I haven't checked, but apparently one of the biggest reasons for engine failures after oil changes is actually a dirty funnel. So you always want to make sure your funnel is pristine and free of debris. Now, I actually just cut this one. I actually took out the little collar that stays around after you take the bottle cap, just to mitigate absolutely any risk of any debris or anything that's not oil going into the engine. So we'll go ahead and put 6 quarts of 530 in there. Go ahead and put the last quart in. Sometimes the bottle's gonna have like these little plastic. You wanna make sure that doesn't get in there too. Let's fill her up. Go ahead and take out the funnel. Put the oil cap back in. Then also go ahead and wipe over the rag just in case you get any oil anywhere. And now that's it when it comes to changing the oil. Now we're gonna go ahead inside the car, turn it on. We're gonna check underneath the car, make sure there's no leaks. We're gonna inspect around the filter just to make sure there's nothing leaking there, and also check the filler cap just to make sure, why not. And I'll also be showing you guys how to reset the oil light, so let's get there. All right, so once we make our way in the car, we're gonna go ahead and put the key in the ignition, and we're gonna turn it to the 2nd position. And then we'll end up having all the dashboard turned on, all the lights and the radio. Now we actually get the message for changing the engine oil soon. Go ahead and press the OK button on your right side. And now we're gonna scroll to information. You can see right there, and let me focus this. Scroll down until you get to the oil life. Go ahead and press the OK button on the steering wheel. Go to yes, and your oil life should be reset. And that is how you change the oil on a 2020 GMC Canyon. I appreciate you guys for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for more.